How is everybody? Good. This is a great room. I'm loving seeing all the faces. Thank you for being here. So we are going to get started. And before we do so, for those of you who have not attended a CUPride event before, we do one thing with every single event, and that's that we go through our tenets. And our tenets are our mission. Our tenets are also our rules of engagement. So as you are here with us today, think about these. They will be integrated into the conversations that you hear. So just be wary, just be mindful, and just be prepared. So CUPride exists to promote the visibility and voice of the LGBTQ plus individuals in the credit union industry. We're here to provide a safe but brave place for communion and discussion. We're here to encourage action by our allies and social change agents. And finally, here to foster inclusivity and consciousness through programs, education, and networking. And I'm going to kick off with a few remarks, and then we've got a full slate of wonderful, wonderful panelists. We've got some surprise guests that are going to come up and share some things with us. So buckle up. We're in for a ride, okay? So first, welcome to the inaugural Stand-Up Summit. This is the first of many. Yes. And it is being powered by CUPride. CUPride is now an organization that is looking to push things forward. And we know that your time is precious here at GAC and in Washington, D.C. I mean, the largest gathering of credit union executives and professionals. And we thank you for choosing to spend your time with us and be dedicated to the credit union movement. We called this the Stand-Up Summit because really, that's exactly what our movement does. And we must remember we are a movement, and this industry was created to stand up and fill the gaps for those who are most in need. People helping people is our mantra, our call to action. But it means nothing without discipline, engagement, investment, and individual action by each of us. How many in this room are DEs? It's exactly kind of what I expected. And for the rest of you, did you hear that reaction? That is what makes credit unions different. Our passion is our common bond. We are the best class ever, right? And we share that passion with others every single day. But we must be careful, because for those that maybe attended the underground, which I know many of you did, where we discussed the echo chamber, our common bond can also echo back to each other that our passion is enough to ensure that credit unions remain a movement of social impact. This isn't enough. We must be diligent, we must be forward-thinking, and we must be prepared to continue filling gaps for those that need it most. Our history is full of these stories. We have Inclusive, created to integrate credit unions into the Community Development Fund. We have the Credit Union Membership Access Act that allowed credit unions to reach all those who needed our help. We have the AACUC calling credit unions to unite to end racism. We have Global Women's Leadership Network empowering women around the world. We have the National Latino Credit Unions and Professionals, I got it right, showcasing the amazing contributions and incredible diversity of the Hispanic and Latinx communities. And I think I have a few of them out there. We also have Happy Cup, dedicated to the inclusion of our Hawaiian, Asian, and Pacific Islander colleagues and members. And of course, I'm up here, we have CUPride. Started from the underground 4 years ago, right here in this very location. We had 37 passionate people who met and said, it's time we take care of our LGBTQ plus family as well. Who was here for that first meeting? I know we have, yeah, there we go. Yep. So it's amazing. We've come a long way. And can you believe it? It was just 4 years ago. Just 4 years. CUPride didn't even have an official name at that point. And 6 months later, in June of 2020, we came out to the industry. You like that? Yeah. Yeah. With nearly 400 professionals from 8 countries who joined our virtual celebration event. In 4 short years, we have accomplished so much. from engaging with 800 professionals in 2021 to now touching more than 22,000 credit union professionals through our membership launch 6 months ago. We reached 37 states and into Canada. We've added resources. Thank you, Patsy. Hello. And launched the Volunteer Network. We have 6 pioneer allies who have chosen to stand up with CUPride, investing in our future and the sustainability of our mission. But standing up is not easy. It has required the discipline of the co-founders and the rest of the CUPride family to stick together and continue to look at the future needs of the LGBTQ+ community. It has required investment of time from our volunteers and the investment and dedicated belief from Mitchell Stankovic and Associates to push us forward this past 4 years. And it has required engagement from the industry. We're part of the CUDEI collective, ensuring that LGBTQ+ voices are being discussed. We ensure the financial well-being of our community is recognized through the efforts of the National Credit Union Foundation and the CU FinHealth Conference. And we partnered with America's Credit Unions to integrate our message of inclusion and belonging for all human beings. A movement is only a movement if we keep it moving, and it takes a hell of a lot of work to do it. So why host a stand-up summit at GAC? Well, first, I want to talk about risk. I know we got some CEOs in here, maybe some CFOs, but I want to bring up some stats. So last year, through the work of payments.com and PSCU, we got a really startling fact that only 4% of Gen Z are credit union members. Gonna let it sink in for a minute. Okay. And we have another one of those, the great movements coming up. In the next 20 years, the great wealth transfer is about to happen. $86 trillion will be transferring from the passing of our older members. And as of now, surveys are showing that 20 to 28% of Gen Z are identifying as part of the LGBTQ+ community. There's a story in that data. There's a story in those statistics. Are we willing to showcase to Gen Z that credit unions are organizations of inclusivity, of belonging, of standing up for those who need their voice heard, and risk offending a few of our older members? Are we willing to risk that once that money is transferred to Gen Z, that it won't come back to the credit union movement? Think about this as we host our discussions today. The second is that we also know that DEI is under attack. It's being pushed to the side. We have organizations like Google and Apple who are cutting and slashing programs, getting rid of internships around DEI. We also know that some are entirely cutting it from their strategy completely. And even worse, we know that some states are just legislating against it. So we're here because this is where the industry leadership is. And those of us working to stand up for others, we need that leadership. We need you in the room with us. When we ask for a seat at the table, we don't want you to give us yours and then exit the room. We want you to bring us in, sit down with us, hear our perspectives, and see our passion for the future of the industry. Today, we brought a stellar lineup of not just thought leaders, but those who are standing up every day for their employees, their organizations, and their communities. They will help guide us in how to be disciplined, engaged, and invested in those that need us most. And they'll share how you can do the same. This is more than just executive allyship. This is truly the heart of people helping people. Thank you. So to get us started, we have a slight change in the agenda. Unfortunately, Chairman Harper from the NCUA was unable to join us today, but we have, and Elizabeth, I did not ask you how to pronounce your last name. Yergubian? Okay, Elizabeth Yergubian is joining us, and she is the Director of External Affairs and Communications and Policy Advisor at the NCUA. Is that right? Perfect. So she's going to join us and provide some words of wisdom from our administration. Thanks. Come on up.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Zach, for the warm welcome and introduction. As Zach stated, my name is Elizabeth Yergubian. I'm NCUA's Director of External Affairs and Communications and also Policy Advisor to Chairman Harper. Chairman Harper, sorry to miss today's event, as this group and its mission mean so very much to him. But it's an honor for me to be here with you today in his place to kick off this year's GAC Week. CUPride's commitment to creating an inclusive and active network for the LGBTQ+ community within the credit union industry furthers the NCUA's pursuit of diversity, equity, and inclusion across the credit union system. In recent months, DEI advocates have faced many challenges, and the current synopsis for this stand-up summit colorfully captures the current and unfortunate climate. Let me quote it now. In today's environment, the mention of DEI is either met with exhaustion or as if we said a four-letter word. That statement begs the question, how did DEI become a dirty word? And more importantly, why? For some ridiculous reason, it's become a target in small-minded circles in search of a boogeyman that threatens the quote-unquote American way of life, which carries the assumption that there is but a single and correct way to live it. And so I ask those trafficking in this nonsense, what on earth are you so afraid of? Is it the diversity, the equity, or the inclusion? Sadly, such fear-mongering and rhetoric has been used to roll back important initiatives that ensure fairness and transparency across the spectrum of financial, political, and educational processes. What's more, these efforts to diminish DEI progress run counter to the research, demonstrating that inclusive organizations make better decisions, operate more efficiently, and generate more earnings. Which is why the second half of this year's CUPride Summit synopsis is critical. It states, however, the importance of DEI in credit unions is more important than ever before. That's the real takeaway from the noise in the current political discourse on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. That it's incumbent on all of us to stay the course. We must each lean in to our DEI operations and practices with greater determination and hope. We must expand allyship more broadly. By leaning in, we can demonstrate that we are allies in both good times and bad, rather than fair-weathered friends who will only stand with you when it's politically expedient. Research does show that organizations that embrace DEI enjoy improved performance, with higher workforce engagement, retention, and productivity. That means diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are both a business and a moral imperative, which is why the theme for today's summit, Achieving DEI Goals and Advancing Allyship Through Discipline, Engagement, and Investment, strongly resonates with the NCUA. Other than being a clever alternate use of the DEI acronym, those three practices, discipline, engagement, and investment, require action by all of us here. If you participated in the NCUA's DEI Summit last year, you may have heard Chairman Harper speak about action as one of 5 key ingredients for effective allyship. The others being perspective, courage, reflection, and vision. Let me review those points now. As many of you know, Chairman Harper grew up in Northwest Indiana's industrial belt of steel mills, refineries, chemical plants, and other heavy manufacturing industries. He's spoken often about how his upbringing exposed him to different cultures, as well as other races and ethnicities, and how it has educated him about the commonalities that diverse groups share, such as hard work and the importance of fairness. And those early experiences informed his perspective about the importance of having a diverse organization to serve a diverse population. Those same experiences are why, under his leadership, we at the NCUA are always trying to be the strongest allies that we can be. At times, allyship also requires courage, the ability to break a pattern and swim against the current. It takes courage to admit and own past mistakes, yet it's the only path towards improvement. And the NCUA is acting to change our institution and be better. Through outward-facing initiatives like the DEI Summit and internal efforts like providing support to employee resource groups, combined with outreach to potential diverse suppliers and recruiting initiatives to promote a diverse pipeline of applicants and hires, the NCUA is advancing DEI principles within the agency and across the credit union system. Building on the success of last year's event, the NCUA will host another Minority Depository Institution Symposium this fall to promote the visibility, financial prospects, and opportunities for minority depository institutions and their members across the credit union system. In focusing on serving historically under-resourced communities, MDIs are advancing efforts to close the racial wealth gap, foster economic growth in underserved areas, build brighter financial futures for all Americans, and allow historically underrepresented groups and families of modest means to pass on intergenerational wealth. Those ideas are at the very core of the credit union system's statutory mission of meeting the credit and savings needs of their members, especially those of modest means. The NCUA wants to support these efforts in any way we can. On that note, I want to encourage all of you here to attend this year's NCUA Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Summit on July 9th through the 11th. There, we can continue to build momentum for financial inclusion and financial security in the credit union system. In acting as an ally, it's also important to reflect on individual priorities and practices. The NCUA and the chairman recognize the NCUA must lead the industry by example by improving the diversity of its own workforce and supplier network. In 2023, more than 2 out of every 5 new hires at the NCUA were people of color, and more than half of the participants in the agency's leadership development programs were women. Finally, by the end of 2023, the NCUA awarded nearly half of reportable contract dollars to minority-owned or women-owned businesses. That's a good start toward lasting change, but it's not enough. Hiring and retaining Hispanic employees at the agency is an area the agency is focusing on improving. Our team conducted a barrier analysis last year to determine how we could be better in this area. And in 2024, the NCUA will increase its outreach to Hispanics and individuals with disabilities to further improve representation and bench strength in our agency's workforce and leadership. The last ingredient for meaningful allyship is vision. Without a clear-eyed vision of where you and your credit union want to go, you'll end up marching in place, and you won't have a yardstick to measure the performance. Each credit union is different. Each organization is different. But one overarching vision that should unite all credit unions and the NCUA is the aspiration of advancing economic equity, the basis of which the credit union movement was built. In the case of MDIs, which face unique challenges like building and maintaining larger reserves to mitigate the credit risk of lending to consumers with lower credit scores, we are utilizing tools which can help. The Community Development Revolving Loan Fund is one important tool for the NCUA. This assists low-income and MDI credit unions in addressing such challenges. At the NCUA's request, Congress more than doubled the funding available for grant funds in 2023 to $3.5 million. As a result, the NCUA awarded more and bigger grants to eligible institutions last year. Last September, the NCUA awarded $3.1 million in technical assistance grants, with 42 MDIs credit unions receiving a total of $1.4 million in grant awards. That's a 5-fold jump in the total amount from 2022. We hope to see similar gains in the 2024 grant round, which will tentatively open in May. Furthermore, in 2022, the NCUA established the Small Credit Union and MDI Support Program as part of our commitment to addressing the needs of small and MDI credit unions. Through this initiative, we have dedicated field resources to address operating concerns in such areas as staff training, strategic planning, examinations, and earnings. In 2024, the Small Credit Union and MDI Support Program will offer expanded opportunities for qualifying credit unions to receive support through NCUA grants, training, and other initiatives. Partnerships with organizations and industry mentors that can support small credit unions and MDIs, and additional support to credit union management in addressing operational challenges. All of these efforts make a difference. Currently, there are 493 MDI credit unions, which is more than 3 times the number of MDI banks. And in recent quarters, these MDI credit unions have had returns on average assets on par with the largest credit unions with more than $1 billion in assets, even though MDI credit unions average about 1/10 that size. MDI credit unions demonstrate that you don't need to be large to succeed. But to be an effective ally, we need to continue to measure and grow NCUA's support for MDI credit unions. Credit unions, too, need to measure their efforts to achieve their allyship vision. Set your vision, then create the appropriate metrics to measure performance, recognize advancements, and achieve real success. In closing, the power of allyship is critical to achieving our collective DEI goals. Vice President Kamala Harris once wrote, "If we are lucky enough to be in a position of power, if our voice and our actions can mobilize change, don't we have a special obligation? Being an ally can't just be about nodding when someone says something we agree with. It must also be about action. It's our job to stand up for those who are not at the table when life-altering decisions are made. Not just those people who look like us. Not just those who need what we need. Not just those who have gained an audience with us. Our duty is to improve the human condition in every way we can for everyone who needs it." Indeed, that's what CUPride and the Stand Up Summit are all about, how we can teach each to be better allies to all and promote greater inclusion in the financial system. That's a worthwhile objective and consistent with the credit union mission. Moreover, it's the right thing to do. Thank you again for allowing me to speak today. In place of Chairman Harper, I'll hand it back over to you, Zach. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I appreciate you coming in and stepping in for Chairman Harper. Your words were right in line with where we're at, and we're excited to push it forward. So without further ado, I am very excited to introduce our MC for the rest of the event, which means I don't have to do any more work. Yay! No. In addition to being a kick-ass credit union executive, she is also a co-founder of CUPride, a demonstrated ally for the marginalized, and my best friend. So please welcome to the stage Dr. Brandy Stankovic.
It's hard to hassle Zach when he's so sweet. This organization is a priority for me because I think these discussions are a priority. It is also a priority to me because of my own journey, my family, raising children, and I think that, and the purpose that I have on this planet is to help organizations and people be the best versions of themselves, and the conversations that we're having in this room include that, as well as to shine a light on the beauty of inclusion. And it's been one heck of a year, y'all, right? And these conversations get stickier, and standing up and being an ally gets harder and harder, which means it's time for us to go elbow to elbow and dig in and continue working towards that, all of the efforts that we have, especially the ones that we have here. To start us off today, or as we continue in this journey, I'd like to bring up Debbie Wegge with up to the front with you are the cooperative community advocate with BECU, to share some personal and professional stories of allyship. And we also thank BECU for being both a pioneer ally and a premier sponsor of CUPride for the GAC in 2024. So thank you. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Brandy. So good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful to see all of your faces here. I'm happy to be here not only as a personal member of CUPride, but representing BECU as a pioneer member of CUPride and a sponsor of this event. I feel lucky in my career to have stumbled upon BECU early in my life. And at that time, I was, I've been there 34 years, so it's been a while. And I won't say how old I am, but earlier in my life, I was a very closeted person, as most of us were, and some still definitely are. And but there were things that were happening at BECU over the years that really allowed me that sort of confidence and space to kind of move beyond that. Starting off with the fact that in the mid-90s, they were offering health insurance for partners, long before domestic partnership was legalized and required for people to offer that thing, and certainly long before my long-term marriage was considered legal. So that spoke volumes to me at that time in my life and really opened the door for me to start thinking differently about the place that I worked. In 1998, we invested in bringing in diversity training, long before you heard the term DE&I, and we brought in a legal consultant, or a diversity consultant that helped us put together that training. And I was honored to be named the key facilitator for that program, and so and delivered that for many years at BECU. Into things that have evolved from that, we our vice president of brand strategy is here, Stephen Black, and we have a approach at BECU about the way we do our marketing that in the early 2000s we invested in saying we're about members and membership, so we have focused all of our ads and our media on our members. So everything you see that we produce has actual members in our ads and in our even our commercials, and that included featuring same-sex couples, business owners, and the like, and also being a premier sponsor of CUPride parade. And there was, warnings out there, concerns that people said, you can't do that. You're going to get a lot of backlash, and members going to get upset. And I would say just the opposite has happened. We have more accolades and people supporting that. Matter of fact, at the end of the very first Pride Parade that we sponsored, there was booths, and the BECU booth was by far one of the biggest crowds around that booth because people were just like, oh my gosh, a credit union is here. To the fact that, but I will say that we did get some backlash, and that there were occasionally members that would, voice their concerns or their disapproval of this. But I was heartened by one of our senior executives that received a call from a member that said, I'm a long-term member, I have a lot of assets at BECU, I think this is wrong, and I'm going to pull out my accounts if you don't change this. And he took the discipline to say, we're a cooperative, we're a member-owned credit union, and we stand on a set of values and principles. And those values and principles include non-discrimination, open membership, being there for our members. And that includes all of our members and all of our potential members. So if those values and those principles don't align with you as a person, then I understand, but maybe we're not the financial institution for you. That is huge. Yeah. That kind of discipline and support is the kind of thing that changes the game. Even before, a couple years before the murder of George Floyd, BECU dove even deeper and created a mantra of belonging, inclusion, and leveraging differences. We called it the BUILD program. They initiated several opportunities for people to engage around those dialogues and training programs and whatnot, but they also incorporated what they called a BUILD Council. And I feel honored to have been included in one of those, the initial inaugural BUILD Council, which included representation from all across the credit union, from all different levels, and all the different aspects of diversity that you can imagine. And we were given sort of the freedom to talk about what does it mean to really elevate belonging, inclusion, and leveraging differences. And as a council, we put forth some things that we felt were the most important, one of which was to really lean into starting employee resource groups. At the time, we had, I think, a veterans group that had formed on its own and a women's leadership group that had started by women leaders that wanted to advance leadership opportunities. I can now say that we have 10 very active, very engaged employee resource groups, including our Pride Advocacy Collective. And there's things that are happening. The credit union has encouraged everyone to put pronouns in their signature line. We are looking for ways to change our systems. That's a whole nother topic for, so that it's easier to capture preferred names and those types of things for people. But at least we're working towards those. And those are huge advancements for actually putting an investment in what we're trying to do and who we're trying to be as a credit union. And sponsoring things like this and being a part of this is also an important factor. I'm proud to be a BECU employee, a BECU member. I'm proud to be a part of this movement. I think if you think about who we are and what we stand for as credit unions, this is what we stand for. Not just CUPride, but all of the aspects of inclusion and building bridges for people's financial freedom, regardless of where they are in their life. And that's a good thing. Who can argue with that? And if you lean on those principles, I think we can move forward. I'm excited to see our panelists today. I'm proud of CUPride and the work that you do to bring this forward. And BECU is definitely a proud sponsor and member of CUPride. So thank you.
Thank you to Debbie. We're shifting doors and moving things around. You'll see this all happen at the same time. And Debbie, I want to say that you've been in the industry a while, and we have seen each other throughout the years and different things. But if Debbie is dedicating her time, that it's a good initiative. So I love that you're here and you're putting your thoughts and your words and your passion behind it. So thank you. Being an ally, and when we discuss allyship, it has to be effective, right? We don't want performative. We don't want people just kind of throwing things out there. And executives have to be all in. Investment comes in many forms: time, talent, treasury. But at the forefront, we must have the tenacity, and it must be seen as authentic, right, to our employees. I mean, we have to be real. Our panelists now that are going to come join us will share their thoughts on what the stand-up investment really takes. So we're going to welcome to the stage Tammy Schultz from True Stage. Come on up. Samira Salem from America's Credit Unions. Lynn Heckler from PSCU Co-op Solutions. And Gozier Mabaibo from Visa. I'm sure I slaughtered that. Thank you so much for being here. And then it's kind of, you just make sure your microphone's right here on your chin.
Test, test,
Yep.
test.
And will you start us off, Lynn? And then everybody can just kind of contribute.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's give one more round of applause.
Are we good? Hi, everyone. I'm Lynn Heckler with PSCU / Co-op Solutions. And really happy to be here today to talk about investment in DEI. And so think about it, our organization invests in a lot of things. So, basically you're committing some resources today, time, talent, money. Right? Somebody called it time, talent, treasury. I kind of like that better. Time, talent, treasury. And we invest in a lot of different things. And sometimes it's as simple as writing a check, right? That can be an investment in something. You put money in a fund and hopefully get some return in the future. But I think that investment in DEI goes beyond writing a check. I think true change requires commitment. And to me, commitment goes kind of a level deeper than investment. So we're committing to the cause. We're committing to stand up for communities that may be marginalized. And we're making that commitment of ourselves. We're taking on the challenges of other folks as if they're our own challenges. And so for me, that's the type of investment that it's going to take to create true change, the kind of change that CUPride is looking to create. So it's investment on steroids, it's commitment. And just a couple of other things, even just, committing time, talent, resources, and being allies. There's a lot of definitions of what that means. But it takes more than that. It takes speaking up for folks when they're not in the room. And because I'm on the executive team of our organization, I'm in a lot of these conversations where the folks aren't in the room. And that's where the rubber meets the road, when you have to speak up for those that aren't there and take on their challenges as if they're your own challenges. And the last thing I would say is, even commitment alone isn't enough without action. Right? Having great DEI programs, that's wonderful, right? But actually taking action and making things happen and standing up your BRGs and going beyond that, showing up, making sure that other executives show up at these events is critical. So with that, I'll get off my little soapbox, Brandy.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, pleasure and honor to be here. My name is Gozier Nwabwebo. I am with Visa, and I lead our global social impact team. And so everything that you just said resonates. I think every company needs to embody diversity, equity, and inclusion, which means embedded in the strategies that you have in place. Everyone within a company needs to represent and be an ally and show up regardless of levels. And I think Zach said this earlier. It's not just the moral imperative, but it also makes great business sense. Having diverse voices in the rooms to discuss strategy, to make decisions, to represent different communities is of great value. And so I completely align with everything you're saying. And I do think that right now, with some of the climate or some of the blowback towards DEI, it's really important for us to actually dig in even deeper, be much more resilient, be much more committed, say it more than one time, say it over and over again, be an ally in the different rooms where other communities might not be present. Speak to the importance of representing, building strategies, building products, building initiatives, and being part of the community.
I love what you just said. And, I think we've all been thinking about this anti-DEI backlash. And so how do we continue to sustain this incredible change that we've been seeing, right, and that we've been a part of, despite what we're seeing, like the flashy headlines. But there are a couple of things. There's some data out there, recent surveys that show that 82% of business leaders feel that DEI is table stakes now, at this moment, right? 67% of these leaders feel like it's just going to get bigger and bigger. So it's not going away. And, I think we need to recognize this. The headlines are going to come at us. All this is, it's going to get worse. We're in an election year, right? So we need to understand that, but also understand that there are all of those allies around the nation in different positions. We all have power no matter where we sit in our organizations, and we always talk about that, that are showing up and that are continuing to move forward, in this work. The other thing I want to say is this work is, yes, about the individual, yes, about who's showing up for whom in rooms when there may not be representation, but it's also about systems. And that's what's going to get us to sustainability. So we need to be pushing hard on systems change. So I think that if we're continuing to move forward on systems change, recognizing that the allies are there, they're growing, and we can continue to link arms with them and continue to be active and activated despite everything that's going on, and in spite of. This should propel us forward, but I feel like those two pieces are necessary: the individual, the personal, but also the systems change. That's what's going to ensure that this we can continue to move forward sustainably.
So Tammy Schultz with True Stage. I came with an acquisition a couple of years ago of the funeral planning business, and then took on the sales organization in June of last year. So it's always hard to be the fourth one to talk, right? And so I also am a big believer, and sometimes we forget about the how to do all of this, right? And so it's easy to say it, and I think that writing the check, that's easy thing to do, but it's the how. And so at True Stage, and even my own belief, is that we do have to put it into action. And one of the first things is I would really love that you added belongingness to all of this, because I can include people and be inclusive, but it doesn't mean that they feel like they belong. I think the second thing is education, and the ERGs is a really great way to do that. So an employee resource group, I think we have 13 now at True Stage. And we do it in a slightly different way. We have these ERGs, but we have executive sponsors, and we also have very clear roles of who the leader is. So there becomes coaching, and there becomes rotation of those members, and also educating that you don't have to be a veteran to be in the veterans group, or to be in the PRISM or the LGBTQ. You don't have to be part of that community to be the ally. And it's really important on this education piece, because so many people they're afraid, how do I talk about it, right? And that's why you have some of the tenets you do at the beginning of this meeting to say, this is a safe space. But a lot of people don't know that, and even having that education within your organization of how do managers create that psychological safety inside your organization so that people can have the conversation and feel free to come out, whatever they want to share. And I think, Debbie, as I was thinking about the story you were telling, when I went through DE, there was a pride parade that was going to be happening. And one of the people in our group had been called and said that their credit union was getting a lot of backlash of being a sponsor. And so what do you think they did? They pulled out. When you think about that, it impacts so many things. It impacts your employees. She said people left because it sent that message. It's to your members, it's to your community, and it's to even those vendor partners that work with you. And so I try to think about how, because it's easy to say, and so that's what I encourage everybody. But sometimes I look in this audience, I'm like, we're preaching to the choir here. So how do we get outside this room and get the other thousands of people that aren't in this room today to just think about so how are you doing that?
CUPride needs to be on the main stage.
If I could just build on several things that you all said, like just talking about creating a culture or a community where people can have dialogue, education, and then you talked about systems change, which those are really critical, because when we think about solving the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it requires long-term thinking. It requires sort of long-term sort of planning, a strategy that's in place that is not looking for immediate results, but more being able to change a system and then implement that system over a longer period of time. And so I think that all of those aspects matter. And I also think that companies or organizations have to also think about collective impact. One organization is not going to be able to do this alone. It requires engagement, collaboration, partnership, and sharing that same sort of long-term thinking so that we can truly have the impact that we desire.
I'd love to jump on the partnership piece, but I think it also works at two levels, both at the external partnership, but also bringing people in within the organization and ensuring that that commitment is unwavering. And I like to think about it as this sort of overlapping Venn diagram of interests, right? And really thinking about where is that place, that space where our interests overlap. That's going to lock in any sort of partnership that you will have externally, but also commitment internally. Really thinking about where is that spot. And if you have that, then you're able to ensure this sort of long-term, stable commitment internally where people will stand up because they know it's in the interest of the organization, it's in the interest of their people, it's in the interest of their members, it's in the interest of their community, right? And it also helps you to find the right partners externally to continue to support this work and to actually get that ripple effect going.
One thing that I was just thinking is all the organizations, first of all, thank you all very much for being here. And the organizations that you represent are very important to this industry and are very large, very integrated parts of this industry. With that in mind, a couple of you said it's easy to write a check. Well, there's a lot of people in the room where that isn't the case, right? It isn't easy. So what would you recommend be an action step for inclusion, for allyship, without being able to do that?
You can do the time and talent without the treasury, right?
Yeah, I know one of the things that, you think about MLK Day, Juneteenth, all those days, whether it's a day that is off for people or not, I think making those days you go through policies and procedures that you have inside your own organization, whether they're the way that you retain or acquire talent, recruiting, things like that, the way that your insurance policies, and if you have insurance policies, are they discriminatory in any way? Those are some of the things that you can do that are just, again, the how, the action items, and you don't have to write a check. It's something you should be doing.
In addition to that, I think beyond just writing a check, I think there is importance in proximity, being more proximate within the communities that you are looking to include, listening, learning, understanding how to engage and really sort of deliver. I think we talked a little about Gen Z earlier and how, Gen Z is a very sort of purpose-driven, sort of community. And they're looking for brands or companies that stand for more than just making money, stand for purpose. And so I think more opportunities to engage within communities, learn from them, understand how can you as an organization be better, what can you bring back so that you can adapt and meet those needs. I think that's extremely important, in addition to obviously writing checks, creating programs, etc.
One other question I had, and Zach's going to come around if there are questions from the audience as well, but what's a hurdle personally that you guys have faced, maybe in standing up in the organization or getting engagement by the team or approval by a board or a CEO?
So I think recently, and it may be because I work for a Florida-based company, but recently the legislation and I'll just call it the climate or the environment has made a lot of folks, some folks, not a lot of folks, feel that it's really okay to push back openly on DEI. Literally yesterday, the University of Florida, which I believe is the biggest educational institution in our state, announced they're firing everyone that is part of a DEI program at the university. So when you're in an environment like that, it tends to create more of that vocal opposition to DEI, and that has been a challenge. But it's a challenge that we've met head on, and not in a way that is backing off of DEI. In fact, we call it time to double down, right? So, but that has been a huge challenge for us past couple of years.
Well, we've heard in the past from members who pushed back and said DEI is not within the scope of a trade association, right? That really you are there to do advocacy for us, right? And so that was maybe not a barrier, but certainly a challenge. You need to engage folks, and also let them know that there is this intersection between advocacy and DEI straight on. We need to be advocating on the part of credit unions to ensure that they have as much space as possible and as many tools as possible to be able to continue and to go deeper in terms of serving underserved and marginalized communities. So that was, one that we've faced and occasionally still hear. Yeah.
And I would say that I don't face a lot from the board or management and anything like that. We do a lot of investment. I think, though, we do offer services to credit unions to help them with their DEI program, and I think the biggest thing we're faced with is fear. People are, because of what we've been talking about, am I going to lose members? All those things. So I'm just going to keep hitting on this education and being okay talking about it. And I know as a parent of 2 gay children, I spend most of my time just educating other people. They ask me a lot of questions, and I think it's got to be okay. And when I think about people saying, I left my magic in my car before I walked into the office, right, because of all feeling comfortable of who you are in your own skin, we've got to teach people. We want people to bring the magic. That's what makes us special, right? And I think that, again, just having those conversations.
Thank you very much. Did you have some, Dad?
Go for it.
It's a very difficult question for me because I think the biggest challenge tends to be just context switching or framing the narrative for different audiences. And so, in different places, you're going to have people who are directly already sort of, allies, or as we said, sort of preaching to the choir. But then there are others who are somewhat agnostic. And so now you have to educate, and you have to frame it in a particular way that it would resonate. So I think that tends to be the biggest challenge, having to figure out, which sort of category a particular audience falls into, and then how do you sort of frame the narrative in a way that would sort of resonate. So that tends to be a pretty big challenge.
We have a couple more minutes. Is there any other questions from the group? Well, thank you very much. What an amazing panel. We appreciate you very much. You are now in for a treat. Do you want to put this back on here? Do you want me to put for Molly? Okay. We're just figuring out the logistics of who's giving their microphone away. We're just going to hold on to, no, this one's mine. Engagement comes in many forms, and employee engagement has certainly evolved. And when it comes to being an ally, sometimes the call to stand hits really close to home. We'd like to bring up a very special guest to tell us a very impactful story of both tragedy and a credit union that did not wait to take action. Please welcome Molly Bell from Ent Credit Union.
Are we on? Yeah, we are. Hi. Hi, everyone. I found out I was going to be up here all by myself this morning about 9 a.m. So I am going to have a special guest myself who's going to help me at some point this morning, or this afternoon. First of all, let me just give a couple of contexts. I don't know that I can add a lot to the amazingness that y'all have already heard. I had actually written down here's 3 things you need to do in order to take action. But I think you've already heard it all, truly, this morning. So I do just want to get to the story that we're here to tell. Let me give you some context and backdrop. So Ent Credit Union was founded and is still headquartered in Colorado Springs, Colorado. If y'all are familiar with Colorado Springs, I think in the 90s, it was where Focus on the Family was founded. Very anti-LGBTQ. And I think when I bounced in the door about 5 years ago asking lots of questions, I was actually surprised at, to be honest, just the lack of, if you will, progressiveness still. So we worked really hard the first couple of years, and certainly that accelerated in 2020 on creating the space of belonging. I was actually really proud of us for adopting that word. What I would say early on, we created a commitment statement It's a big deal that it's on our website. No joke, right? That was a conversation to put a commitment statement about belonging on our website. But it is there under careers. But just that notion of who we are. One of the things I'll just say this morning, there was a lot of conversation about trust, building community. You cannot do that if your employees don't feel all those things. It is impossible to be a member-focused organization if you are not a team member-focused organization. And so I think that's been the journey of our work. But in 2022, in December, we had a shooting at an LGBTQ club in Colorado Springs. We actually had an employee who was shot 5 times. She was one of our service center managers, an amazing human. And we thought we were going to lose her. And we found out that she was there actually with one of the heroes that evening who took down the shooter and some of their kids that were celebrating. It was a drag show, and they were just having a great time. And hate walks in the door. So it brought it home real quickly, right, of what we were going to do, what was going to be our response to that. And I want to pause and bring up my colleague who generously over lunch, so about 2 hours ago, agreed to allow us to have more of a conversation instead of me just talking to y'all. Annie Sneed leads all things community advocacy for Int Credit Union.
Thanks, Molly.
Of course. And you were just such a big part of that weekend when it all started to unfold. So why don't I be quiet for a minute and just tell us your perspective. What happened? What were you thinking? And how'd you pull us all together?
Oh, well, that's way too generous. You pulled us all together, you and leadership. I remember that morning waking up very early to texts from friends across the country, just checking in, obviously, because when you see that headline. And then I waited a couple hours and texted you and said, hey, I've been thinking about what can we do to respond from a community perspective for the victims and then even potentially the heroes when we learned of them. And you said, yeah, the chiefs and I have already been texting this morning as well. And what I found that was so impressive, as Molly kind of alluded to in the beginning, is that we kind of have a relatively conservative base. And but there was no question that despite where this was, movie theater, Club Q, grocery store, we were going to respond. And so the senior leaders really rallied quickly and then learned, of course, that one of our team members was impacted, but we're already working to help the victims even before that. So y'all were the ones who were really impressive in that. Talk a little bit about that conversation and the immediacy.
Thank you. Yeah, it was like Annie said, we had text messages in the morning. We kind of started to get on the call. My colleague, Matt Gendron, who runs all things engagement, so our branch network, and is really probably the literal front line if members were going to be upset. And to be honest, and we're very good friends, I was worried. I was worried as whether or not we were going to be able to take that step, some kind of steps, some kind of statement. And right away, Matt's like, no, we have to do something. This is ridiculous. And I think that in that moment, I felt the proudest I've ever felt. And being part of that team who I know there was some trepidation of what would this mean for our brand? What would this mean for our place in the marketplace, right? Were we going to get backlash from members? But for them right away to say, Matt in particular, like, nope, we got to do something. I think, Annie, you were the one that came up with the idea for a fund. We immediately got some emails out to team members to let them know that we had a team member impacted and sent them links to advocacy funds, if you will, to help out victims. And our team members stepped up. We created a separate one internally as well. But what we did, which was super cool, and I think Annie and I were the ones noodling this on the phone on Sunday, and I'm going to give my husband a shout out who's not here, but y'all can tell him when you see him that I did. He'll be so proud.
Mike Briss.
Mike Briss, that's right. In the background, he's stammering and saying, you should give an award to the 2 guys that took the shooter down. Do something like that. So we came up with the title Community Advocate Award. And first ever, you know, and we've done it again this year, but we set aside $100,000 and we gave each of those gentlemen a $50,000 check just to say thank you for being a hero, and mostly to go out to the community to say these things matter. Doing the right things matters. It matters, right, to our team members and members. So it was pretty cool. We did get backlash, huh?
Yeah, we got a couple
Didn't
calls.
we fight
but
about
actually
who was
Matt,
gonna
Matt
like
had to take the calls.
Yeah, exactly. There was one email and I'm like, I want to answer this one, and they said no. They wouldn't let me answer it.
The other cool piece of that is that Richard Fierro, who I'm sure you saw, was the main hero being interviewed. Thomas James, the other hero, was much more of a private, humble guy. But Richard was actually a longtime business member of ours, which we didn't realize. And he was the one who saved Joanne's life, was there celebrating for the first time at a gay club with Joanne. And he and his wife own a brewery in town, and they had actually had a couple of really hard years due to COVID. And so to see the community also rally around them and just pour, I mean, their website crashed because people from across the country were ordering shirts. So that was just another really neat piece.
Yeah, and I want to leave time for questions too, but one of the things I want to say is, and I think it was said in the panel, there can be a factor of fear about taking action and putting yourself out there in your community as a credit union. And again, going back to how would it impact your brand and what will members think, egads. And I think that we have to stand up, though. We have to stand up. It's literally part of our job. And I think we can do it in ways that don't shake the very foundation of who we are at the same time. Yeah, I want to pause there and just see if there's other questions. Do you have anything else to share about any of that? Okay.
Shout out to our team members because they raised over $15,000 for Joanne specifically just to get to her immediately. I mean, of course, there were nationwide funds set up, but we knew that wasn't going to be what their family, because Chip, her husband, was also shot as well. So we needed to get funds to those kiddos fast. And it was right before Christmas time.
Right before Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Stephen Black with BECU, and I grew up in Colorado, and half my family live in Colorado Springs, and they are of the Colorado Springs community. Nothing against,
no.
You know, I know it's a diverse community, but I'm just blown away that you started that advocacy award. That just is so inspirational, and it makes me think we do a lot, but there's so much more we could do, and we could do some unique things. So I think you have a lot to teach us, and I hope that your message gets out to many credit unions across the country. So I just want to say thank you.
Oh, that's
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So obviously there's a true concern that most organizations have about how do you cross into this conversation, especially with a membership who isn't always going to agree with you. But obviously something happened, and it wasn't even a second thought. So is it really a true fear, perceived fear, lack of courage? What do you think it was that made people just move in the right direction versus have a conversation about should we do this?
I think it's a perceived fear, and I think this came up. Let me give you a different example. We had our ER, one of our first, I call them EEGs, employee engagement groups, mostly because I just have to be different. God forbid I use ERG. So our employee engagement groups, one of the first formally formed one was CUPride in the summer of 2020. And I remember we did give them some treasure. They all get a budget, and they can use it for philanthropy or T-shirts or whatever, but it's their budget. They get to spend it. It's of and by employees. We have senior leaders who are exec sponsors. Other than that, it is 100% run by employees. And they wanted to sponsor the Pride Parade in Denver and the Springs. And we said, sure, but don't wear int gear. And you can't take the int tent. And, you can give some things away, but, just be quiet about it. Is that right?
Yeah, and no int car either.
No int car.
No piggy.
And that was in 2020 or early 2021. And we went back to leadership, and we're like, that's ridiculous. And I think somebody referenced it a minute ago, like that made them feel like shit and other. And the opposite of belonging is making somebody feel other. And so we talked, and again, going back to perceived fear, like let it happen. People that are there are going to be, oh my God, credit unions here, that's kind of cool. That's exactly what happened. So they take the tent now, and they take the car, and they take the pictures. They're allowed to post on social, which we didn't allow at the beginning either. So it's taken a few years, and again, it sounds ridiculous, but if you grew up in the Springs, you might understand. But we're making progress in that way, and I think every step you take is a proof point that it ain't that big a deal.
Yeah, I think somebody else was talking about their Pride event earlier on one of the panels, and just how everyone was so, I think it was you, Debbie, so excited to see their booth there. Specifically the Denver Pride Parade. I mean, it was a packed booth. And so to see the perceived fear is not there was pretty incredible.
No, go ahead.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Chriselle Martinez with Inclusive. I am your neighbor, though. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it kind of rings near and dear to my heart because I remember when this story broke on the news. And the first thing that came to mind, working in the credit union space, for me, I have a doctorate degree in counseling. So my background is more in the mental health side of how we move through this environment and we work in these in our communities, and then things like this happen, and we have to not only think about how we structure things in the financial system, but also how we manage mental health and trauma response. So I'm just curious to know where that next step was, or what that looked like for you all, and sharing that amongst people, because I think those are things that we don't really talk about, is that next, how staff was feeling after all of this happened. So if you could, provide any insight on that.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think, first of all, right away, most of y'all, I'm sure, have the employee assistant program. So you have to be careful how far you step into that world, but obviously offering those resources up. And our HR team, anytime we have a robbery, even our HR team is there with resources, with hand-holding, literally sometimes, to help employees out. We also, though, I think we have one of our EEGs is Minds Matter, and so we'll often tap into them for resources to help employees. We one of our big philanthropic gift areas is in pediatric mental health, and so Annie is working on all this work for us to do in May around Mental Health Awareness Month, and we'll work with our Minds Matter teams to get their help to bring those resources to bear. But
yeah, and I think I'll give a shout out to our CUPride EEG, because they hosted a special, I think it was probably that Monday night, sent an email to everyone and said, hey, we know this is after hours, but if you just want to come and grieve and tell us how you're feeling, come to this Zoom call, and it's going to be a safe space. That's the other thing. Club Q is only one of 2 gay clubs in Colorado Springs, and now the other one is shut down to an electrical fire. So sadly, there is no real safe space for our LGBTQ community right now.
I forgot about that. They did a nice job with that too. Yeah.
Debbie?
One question while we're running the mic. Did you get any employee resistance? And if not, or if so, what advice would you have for people if they do face internal resistance?
I'll use we didn't for this. We didn't. I think everyone really rallied around the fact that we had somebody impacted, and that anybody can be anywhere celebrating, and that this could hit home in a real way. We did. I'll just tell you a story because it's related to your question. We have a group. Again, we just kind of let employees sometimes go and run, and we have a small group of employees that created this podcasting with a purpose. And you're encouraged to listen to a TED Talk or do whatever, and then they have a meeting about it. And they sent out the title of a TED Talk that was something about what? White men and your bias?
White men, check your privilege.
Check your privilege. That went over like a you-know-what. I mean, because the distribution group was all supervisors. And so accidentally, one of the dudes replies all, "Well, I'm going to give Molly a piece of my mind." And so I'm like, bring it on, baby. Come on, let's sit down and talk. That one caused backlash, and it lasted a while. And I had a number of meetings with our cis white male friends. And but, you know, I think that what I loved about it, quite honestly, is that it opened up space to have the conversation, and it opened up space for me to hear from them and understand their feelings and talk about it. We had multiple kind of virtual meetings after that to give them space and time, and why is this worrying for them, and it continues, but it was actually, I think overall, it was positive. I mean, we moved together, and we didn't lose any of those dudes. They're still around. Because the dude that emailed, I think, was like, "You're going to fire me."
Yeah, this is Debbie. I just wanted to ask, because I think you guys are doing really well as a credit union. So even though there may have been some backlash from members, of call here and email there, there's a difference between that and mass exodus of members from your credit union, right? Or your brand being tarnished all over. So I just wanted to ask, I mean, how was the impact to the credit union overall and the brand versus those one or two, well, maybe more than one or two, but you know, just because of the difference between that.
I think that we're not aware if it's caused any larger negative backlash. And I think some of our story has been as we've grown across the Front Range outside of Colorado Springs, and we have as many branches outside of the Springs now as we do in, by more than 100% actually. I think what we're also learning is there's a very diverse population out there, and we darn sure better learn how to be a little bit more progressive with our brand, or we're going to lose those college students that go to CSU, because we're in Fort Collins now. So I think that if anything, it's given us more permission to play with our brand, because we're expanding anyway. And you're right, we haven't had any.
Yeah, and Sarah McKinney, our head of legal, she'll tell you, she's in the house, we will fire members, as I'm sure many of you will, if they're hateful. She'll give you the correct term. Thank you. That's why she's head of legal.
That's great. Any more questions? I have one. Thank you, because you actually I had a two-parter. She kind of asked it, because I was going to ask, how many millions of dollars in assets did you lose over supporting the LGBTQ? Because I feel like that's the thing we get. Oh, we don't want to offend. We don't want people to take their money out. You know, what was the true impact? So the second thing is that we brought it up with the first panel, is that we're preaching to a choir. And that's part of the reason why we're recording this, because we don't want to just preach to the choir.
Sorry.
we want the other 5,900 credit union professionals who are not here to be a part of this conversation. So we're not preaching to a choir. We are bringing them in, right? So you talked about Colorado Springs. We have members in Texas. We have brought up Florida. What's kind of your next step with this, and how are you going to continue to build on kind of what maybe was jump-started with, unfortunately, a tragedy, but has now kind of moved you forward in this space?
One of the things we're doing, and this was on my notes to tell y'all, we 3 or 4 years ago started doing the employee engagement score Q12 with Gallup, and made that investment for employee engagement. Well, Gallup has other tools. We measure thriving, which is not just how employees are feeling at work, but how they're doing in their community. One of the things we learned, for example, this last thriving score or thriving survey, was that our employees are feeling very financially vulnerable. No surprise, but maybe it was shocking. Over 70% of our employees are feeling financially vulnerable. So what we do with that information is, well, clearly we're not doing enough, right, to coach inside the house. So what can we do? What are the programs? How do we do a better job of making things accessible. So we put those, what we learned from those scores. We also measure belonging. That's an actual indicator as well. We measure it and look at graphs and charts by demographic area, by demographics, to make sure that, where do we see pockets of change? God forbid we're going down. But we use that data information to help plan those next steps. We have built entire curriculum in a university for bias and understanding belonging, and how do you take action, and it's all derived from listening to our team members and figuring out how we can affect change from there.
Yeah, and I'll just give you credit because I know you're too humble too. But I think Molly was part of the reason that we started EEGs, and it's those who are involved in an employee engagement group are highly more engaged in their overall work than those who aren't. So kudos to you, Chief Development Officer.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, y'all.
Such an engaging and outstanding and heartfelt story of showing members what's important. Now I'd like to bring Zach back up to the stage. And as Zach mentioned, we've known each other for a very long time. And we've shared various versions of, and different individuals have shared their stories and their coming out stories. And what we would like to do and share with all of you is we were in it together. So we're going to share both sides of the coin, both what Zach's perspective and his own story, and then what I went through as his best friend when he came out as well. And then we'll dig in and we're going to kind of frame it based upon our tenets. So Zach, shall we?
Do it.
I think it's only fair that I let Zach go first. I mean,
I don't understand. Yes, I'll go first. So we had the opportunity and we did it very spontaneously. Decided, let's tell the story. I'm going to write down my thoughts. She wrote down her thoughts, and we found out that 15 years after I had come out, that there were things that she had no idea, and I had no idea had happened. The first thing I have to say about coming out is, and I'm sure many of you have heard this, especially since we are preaching to the choir, coming out is a process that happens every day. It happens all the time. It is something that that many people have to do on a daily basis. Some people's coming out stories are different. I don't believe in the term that some are easier, some are harder. I think that everybody has their own internal place where it comes from. For me, it could be seen as easier because when I did come out, I was accepted by my family. I was accepted by my friends. There was no pushback. There was no backlash. However, what was happening before that was a very sincere amount of mental anguish and depression that I didn't share with people. And I think that that's probably the key thing. And one of the things that we've done with CUPride and PSCU is we've brought people together who are willing to share their coming out stories. And if you get a chance, not only watch it yourself, but for those who are not in the room, share with them. Because I have heard from people who are maybe not as advocating for the LGBTQ+, come back and say, I had no idea that those were the things that were going through people's heads, that maybe were going through their families' heads. For me, I shared with Brandy that I very much was trying not to be gay. I had a mantra that I spoke to myself every morning going to work, and it was very simple. It was, I'm not gay, I'm not gay, I'm not gay. And I said it over and over and would get to a place where I'm like, okay, yeah, you've got this, we're good. But then it would come crashing back in, crushing as well. And then it just got to a point, unfortunately for me, it was a tipping point that was not at the best time of my life, but it pushed me to a place where I felt like, hey, let's just get it all out there. And so I did. Brandy was one of the first people that I told. And then I did not realize after that conversation how much was happening behind the scenes of not only my anguish, but of those who stood up for me just as a friend. And maybe that's the time I transfer this over to you. I know, now I'm starting to get...
I know, you can feel emotion. Part of it was that we worked together also at the time, and we also had a shared friend group, and Zach wasn't gay in how he projected to the world and was very forthright in his communication on that. Thus, I had his back in any time anybody wanted to project that onto him, right? So if someone's, he's gay, you got to know. And we have conversations now over drinks. Oh, well, but this is how he acts. And you have to know that. And every time I shut those conversations down, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. Your perspective doesn't matter. What he says is his truth, and I stand by that. And so I stood up over and over and over going, no, let it go. He is not. He is saying that he is not. That is what we believe he is not. And it wasn't my place to project anything to him. It's no one else's place to put that story in his mouth. So then he did feel confident enough. I did not know that he was under the anguish that he was until after the fact. Of course, everything is clearer in hindsight. When we did share our stories with each other, he's like, we were out at some party, like all of our friends were together, and I can't figure out. And I was like, yeah, it was my 25th birthday. Yeah, we were out for my birthday, bro. Way to steal the spotlight. So nonetheless, when that happened, then I got, of course, a lot of messaging of, I told you, I've been around here, whatever. And I immediately then switched. And if anything I'm good at, it's standing up. It's standing up in those moments. And it doesn't matter if that's his story. He's gay. There's not much more to it, right? We're living for it and we're moving forward. The hard part for me personally, being his friend, is to be as frank, as this group deserves, is that I went from having a very nerdy, humble, always staying home, never, sexually active roommate, friend, best friend, and person we worked together, to having someone exploring all sides of that in a very open way. And that wasn't the human that I had known for the last 10 years. And so in a way, I lost my best friend. And we had to find each other again in the new, more authentic light in both sides. And that was difficult, to say the least, because it was exposing me to things I hadn't been exposed to before. It was exposing both of us to emotions we hadn't felt before. And it was challenging other areas of life because, again, we were integrated. It was work, it was life, it was home, it was everything. And we quickly found that we needed to let one of those go. So he moved out. And we have continued to redefine our relationship over the years and all the challenges that both of us have gone through, that, of course, being one of the most impactful.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I do. I just to add that, yes, for those of us in the community, when we come out, it is very hard. That doesn't mean it doesn't impact those around you as well. And so I implore our community, my community, that we give grace in those things, and that people have to adjust and learn and understand to come with us. Yes, was I accepted immediately by my family and friends? Of course. Did I get questions from my mother like, oh, thank you, Emma, from my stepmother saying, well, how do you have kids? And things like that. And I'm like, you are an intelligent woman. Like, these are things that we don't need to be asking. So yes, there will be grace but understanding that, knowing that, actually probably brought us closer together. So, yep.
And I think the grace is an important piece. I would never have tried to steal that. It's hard for me too, or any of that. That never ever came out of my mouth. But it was damn hard for me too, you guys. It was really, really hard. And so going through that journey together is important. And I think the fact that we reflect on it now and he says that, he's offering that. I can't urge that because I'm not ever going to be in those shoes in that way. But recognizing that if somebody's along the journey with you, then allow them to be on the journey with you. right? And I think that that's an important component.
Yeah, and I think kind of transitioning here, because we had a couple points that we wanted to talk about. I mentioned when I introduced her, a demonstrated ally. Like, I mean, Brandy will have your back no matter what until she doesn't. And if she doesn't, then you screwed up. All right? I'm just telling
usually
you.
because you drink too much.
Or maybe that. But and so knowing, like, hearing those stories was not surprising to me, that Brandy was going to defend me no matter where I was in my life, period, because that's who she was. So transitioning to now, as I mentioned, Brandy is a co-founder along with myself and Linda Bodie. Hi, Linda. And we knew it was important for somebody like Brandy to be a part of this because we needed an ally. We needed somebody who knew how to be an ally. But that wasn't easy for you either, to stand up for the community and do things good. Do you want to share some of
the decision to be a part of it was the easiest decision ever. Yes, right? Yes, this is something that we need to be doing. This is something that I'm all in all the time. The thing that has been difficult, or my challenge, my push to people I speak to, is whether I'm working with the homeless shelter, I'm working with people in AA programs, or I'm working with any kind of different affinity group. Sometimes I challenge that concept of only having people around you that have been through this, right? So one of the issues we have with the homeless shelter that I work with in Southern Nevada is that they only employ people that have been homeless. The problem then becomes everybody that works there has been through this and maybe sometimes don't see outside of that. Right? And so I always challenge, we need to have allies in this conversation as well. So the same is true, I think, in any affinity group. For real change to occur, we all have to be having the conversation. That doesn't mean there are things within affinity groups that only those within the affinity will understand. I get that. I will never understand what it's like to be homeless. I will never understand what Zach has gone through. I, though, can be side by side with him in these efforts of change. And so with that, we declare that allyship is not an identity. Being an ally is not an identity. It's a lifelong commitment to making a stand. It's a lifelong commitment to standing, fighting the front line, but also having individuals' backs. With that in mind, we started CUPride, and I have never gotten so much hate mail. And I'm comfortable with it. I share it. Sometimes we laugh about it when we're making trying to make light of things, but it's usually by people from the community. I don't see a lot of backlash from those that are anti-LGBTQ+. I have more backlash from people that are saying, what is this cishet chick doing at these sessions, and trying to talk to me about what allyship means. So grace goes all ways, right? Grace goes in all different directions. And I think that that's been an important part of not only the story that we have, the story of CUPride, but each and every one of you. So I'd love at this moment for you to look around to the people around you and say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for being you. All right. If we bring it back together. So it's very important in all of these DEI discussions, and it is unfortunate the things we've seen over the last year, and that's kind of where we're transitioning to now and what, is part of that. But we need to have he for she. We need to have white allies for black lives. We need to have all of us in this room fighting and having pride, right? I mean, that's what this is all about. With that, it has been a crazy year, as we mentioned at the beginning, and we also see a little bit of outrageous behavior that is occurring. We have a close mutual friend that loves to make it his mission in any party he goes to convert everyone's thoughts to everything that he believes to be true. And it can be a bit righteous at times. Now, I'm not saying that Sue, I don't know if she's in the room yet, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm not saying that Sue burning your bra in the 70s wasn't important for me to be able to sit up here and talk to you on a microphone, right? And tell her I said that. But that is important too. So being outrageous, being forthright, being thought-provoking is always important. And sometimes creating progress in a more humble and accepting way, in a way that other individuals can understand, is also important, because sometimes it just creates conflict when we're outrageous. And our mutual friend, when he comes into places, will pick the person that he thinks has the most, and then it erupts into something that neither individual wanted to begin with. Am I articulating that?
Yeah. Well, I know exactly what you mean, so hopefully others do, but very much so. I will tell somewhat of a similar story in starting CUPride, and this was, once again, getting it from the community, and there are very different beliefs in how you create change, and I think we all know that. We also know what the credit union movement and industry is like, and what you need to do and how you need to move forward to bring people along with you. Calling people out in the credit union industry will get you nowhere. But there are some in the LGBTQ community that believe that akin to burning bras is the only way to make it happen. And that was what we knew with CUPride, was something that couldn't be where we took this, that we created the tenets that we did, that we pushed forward in that way, and that we called people in. And I think we heard it on the first panel, that we have conversations in different ways with different people, depending on who they are and where they're at in their allyship journey. But it's so important that you don't get the righteousness in you, because yes, you might be right, but righteousness will never get you to a place where people are going to have your back, take the arrows, and fight the front lines, ever.
And a big piece of that, we chose in the very first formative meeting that we had after the Underground a few years ago to not require labels, right? So initially somebody thought, hey, we'll have a name badge and you can identify where you fit, what acronym you fit under, what letter you are. Maybe you're an ally, maybe you're a lesbian, maybe you're gay. And we're going to put it on and we just went, no. One, because that creates exclusivity for someone that doesn't know where they fit. Two, that requires people to fit. And three, that can potentially cause people to have to be out when they aren't ready to have those conversations. And we just want people that are fighting for love. And so that piece, although at the time I could say that we had it all figured out, but we didn't. We just went, whoa, we won't do labels. But it really has truly created an inclusive environment.
Very much so. I mean, every CUPride event, it's never, are you gay? Why are you here? It is always about, what's the message? What are we talking about? And what are we going to change today? That's it, period. And we never ask. And if people want to share, we are ready to hear it. We are ready to love you. We are ready to support whatever that is. But it's never a requirement.
Good and bad, yeah. So at this point, what we would like you to do is talk about an action item maybe that you've recently taken or one that you'd like to take and share with each other. And then we're going to run the mic and we're going to share a few of those so we can get motivated and get some ideas here in the last few minutes of this portion. Sound good? So talk to someone near you, action item that you've recently taken or you would like to take in the near future. Go.
Come on, those younger ones, they know. That went really well. Yeah. I didn't know I was going to fry again.
So I thought it was the cigarettes earlier. It's definitely.
So, good. Thank you.
Finish your thought. Finish your thought. We're going to bring it back together. We're going to bring it. Let's bring it back together. Let's bring it back together. I mean, how do you even get in the way of credit union love? Like, I could have a microphone, but no. Thank you. All right, let's bring it back together.
Will you share?
I want to hear from a few of you in the room, and we're going to start here with our good friend, her Wagner winner, Linda Bodie.
Yes.
All right, Molly, thanks. All right, we did something very crazy, as always. This has been a lifelong dream of mine and maybe my community, I'm not sure. But we just opened a new branch that's not totally a branch. It's a community empowerment center. And we've been planning this for at least 5 years. So it's finally open. And part of that plan was to dedicate space, lease space, to Rainbow Pride of West Virginia, our gay pride organization. And this is their first ever community space that they've ever had. They've had an office for storage and some small meetings, but now they have this beautiful, welcoming space at our credit union. That's community empowerment. That's making a difference. That's showing up and doing something. So it's that easy.
So I asked Tom to. I'm sorry that you had to go after Linda, but I'm excited to hear what you have to say. So,
yeah, I'll stand over here so I don't have anybody at my back. So hello, everyone. I'm Tom Belekovich. I work with the World Council of Credit Unions, and we were just chatting a bit. I mean, the stories that were shared from Ent and that tragedy in Colorado Springs reminded me of one of my roles at WOCU has been to facilitate international exchanges between credit union executives in different countries. So many times that's groups from Latin America coming to the U.S. and diving deep into credit union issues. And this particular exchange happened to take place in Orlando about a month after the Pulse nightclub massacre. And as we were driving around that community, there are a number of places where there are still shrines and a lot of recognition and people gathered going on. So this became a part of the conversation in the group. I'm driving around a 15-person passenger van with a group of credit union people, and these visits started out each morning with a prayer with that was led by the group. And as the conversation touched upon the Pulse massacre, it was really clear that the connections and the empathy for what had happened had a really strong religious undertone to the way that people responded. And it was really painful. It was really hard for me on a professional level where, I have this role to be a diplomat and to bridge the connections between people, to find the strength to be open about being gay and share this with this group. Is just something that has struck with me about just how difficult and how painful that is for people to go through that. So I think what you're doing and what this group is doing, what CUPride is doing, is so fantastic. And I think that there's a real opportunity for us to recognize how far we've come in the U.S. I think it's horrible what's happening right now and how divided people are, and just the headwinds that we feel, are just so intense and terrible. But I think it's important to recognize how far that we've come, how much more progressive that this country is than many other parts of the world. And I think there's a role within credit unions and the connections that we have to this global movement to support one another and find ways to kind of bring this to others that have nothing like this in their countries. So anyway, that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, we're going to transition to our next panel here. In June of 2020, as we all know, the call for understanding and recognition of DEI was resounding across the country and across the world after the murder of George Floyd. But here we are, nearly 4 years later, and we're seeing DEI, of course, take a back seat, like we've been talking about throughout the day. And it's also even being legislated as a criminal act. When motivation dies, discipline must take over. So let's learn how credit union executives are maintaining this discipline in allyship. I'd like to welcome to the stage Rebecca Riordan from Chartway Credit Union. And Lee Brady from State Employees Credit Union. Renee Sattywhite from the AACUC. And Mike Bell, CU Strategic Planning, who, by the way, was my facilitator when I went through DE like 100 years ago. So thank you so much.
Thank you for aging me that way.
We're both very young. Who would like to start us off?
Well, discipline, seeing I'm a mother, probably, and grew up within the HR field, discipline probably hits pretty close to what I do every day. So really, I want to thank everybody who's in this room. I mean, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and I think looking out, I see a lot of tough, brave people. And a lot of what we've talked about here today, there's nothing I think any of us disagree with. We love empowering others. We love seeing those succeed who perhaps weren't given a chance when they should have been. And we love to help our communities, every single one of us. So this event and having CUPride is such a tremendous resource. When Zach called and I joked that I was the B team from Chartway because Brian Schools, our CEO, is just very busy this event. But we met with our resource group, our Pride resource group, and I said to them, what do you want me to say? What should I share? And they talked about, and I thought I was going to hear all these really huge things. They shared such simple things that we just did, adding, doing training and adding pronouns, the ability to put pronouns on email, on your name badge. They said that was one of the most impactful things, and it just sends a message to everyone in the organization and to the members. They love being in our resource group. We have 5, and the Pride group is the smallest. They are very impactful. We have a unique footprint. We're in Virginia and Salt Lake City, and Zach promises that he's going to get to our Pride Parade in Salt Lake. It's one of the biggest in the country. And we were the only credit union that participated last year. Our truck, our team members were out there with their T-shirts, and we had so much positive feedback from people. And since then, it's turned into a bit of a pipeline for resource, because it shows that who we are. And Renee came to our credit union to speak also, and we talked about the intersectionality of who people are today and the importance of that. And welcoming to one can be welcoming to all. So I promise I'm going to make one more point, and then it's your turn. So we also have worked hard to change some of the procedures and some of our policies. We talk a lot about, yes, we want to be welcome today, but you know, when I leave and retire in a few years, I want to know that we've had some impact. So we changed things like bereavement leave. Sounds really simple. It's now compassionate leave. And we've broadened the definition of, you know, what happens in your life and when you can go out. That's really impactful. Things like making your 401k plan auto-enroll. Right? If you did not grow up in a place of privilege, and I didn't, although I know I have a ton of privilege, but finances was never one of them. My first boss called me in and said, you must enroll in this 401k. And now I'm doing that same thing at Chartway. They can opt out, but it just helps people build that wealth from the second they start out, all those entry-level team members. So those are some of the small changes that we feel can be impactful, and we know we have so much more to go. We have so much more to learn, and we're just grateful for events like this and the network and being part of this wonderful movement.
Thank you. It's a hard act to follow there. So I'm going to go off script just a little bit, and I want everyone to wish Emma Hayes a happy birthday today. Sorry.
Let me add.
Happy birthday to you.
We're your biggest cheerleaders.
There you go. So with State Employees Credit Union, we have been in the diversity space not as long as BECU. Let me tell you, we are the South. I mean, it is what it is, right? But believe it or not, we had a couple of our board members who kind of were the initial cheerleaders in getting us involved. And how many folks have a diversity committee on their board? Their board has a diversity committee. So we have one out there. We have had that in place since 2018. Our board felt very strongly about that. And so getting that, obviously, together, it's figuring out what you want to do, right? And one of the first things that we put in place was a diversity and inclusion policy. And it's how we want everyone to feel included and how you need to treat people and treat each other. So each of our employees has to accept that as part of their annual policy acceptance every year. And then the committee wanted a course. And so the easiest way to deliver that course for us was through a learning management system. And they were adamant they wanted scenarios in that course. And so we tried to make it very, very scenario based, but we require that still every single year. The first year we didn't have a test, an assessment that went along with it, but the second year we did, and every year thereafter we did. So, and you can keep taking it till you pass. It's not pass or flunk, all right? You can keep taking it. And then 2020 hit, right? And obviously there was increased importance in the world with George Floyd. And I remember sitting and I don't know how many credit unions had put out a statement on equity and justice, right? And I remember we were talking about that at our credit union. And one of our senior leaders said, "Why do you have to do that?" And I looked back and I said, "Why wouldn't you do that?" And we did. And I think it was good. I do. And then one of our leaders in our outreach space, who just moved to Texas, daggone it, with her husband. Kelly Holloway. She came and she said, "Look, with that, we need to start something in terms of crucial conversations, because people need to be comfortable talking about the differences in the world and what is right and what is wrong here." And so Kelly spearheaded that, and every single manager in our organization was required to go through that. But it was a really, really good exercise, right? And then life got crazy, right, with the pandemic. Let's fast forward a little bit. And everybody is remote, except for our branch folks, of course. And DEI kind of went off the radar just a little. Now, we still had the required course, but then entered Emma, all right, and reviving that up. And no, we don't have ERGs yet, and we don't have EEGs like Molly, but we will have CANs, all right? So it's communities and networks. And we are going to start that fairly simply, because one of the things we're going to do is leverage our relationships with CUPride, with AACUC, with NLCUP, right? Those are very important. But we're going to start with women, right? I'm the first female CEO of State Employees Credit Union. And let me tell you, I didn't get the job twice when I applied before. And applying the first time, going through that, it was clear to me why I didn't get the job. And the second time, I had to do some soul searching. Should I even apply? If they didn't want me last time, why would they want me this time? But I did, and I got turned down again. And then when our choice did not work out and wanted to do something else at the organization, at another organization, the board came to me, and the joke is, I know Emma's heard this a million times, but I had not showered that Saturday. No lie. I still looked cute in my skirt and my visor and my quarter zip, by the way, but no shower. And our board chair called me and said, "What are you doing?" I just got out of the grocery store. And he said, "We need to see you now." And I thought it was a whole different ballgame, of which I'm not going into what I thought it was. But I went over to the house. They sat me down and said that our previous CEO had turned in his resignation, and they said it was unanimous that they wanted me to be the CEO, all right? And I never knew how powerful that was for our organization and for the females in our organization. So women is going to be one of those networks, the young professionals, military, and then what they call silver and gold. So I know. And you know, it's those who, let's say they've been around at our organization for a long time, right? I fit in that category, although I'm not leading that one. So there's a lot of good things that are happening. But it does take discipline to continue that, because the easiest thing to do would be say, you know, this is not high on the radar. Let me tell you, there is plenty to do right now in the credit union world when you worry about liquidity and you worry about, new systems, technology going in. How are you going to make things work? You've got to be disciplined in getting that done. And thanks to Emma.
Okay, y'all know I have to be different, right? They said stand. Everybody stand with me. Wave your hands up in the air. Bend to the waist. Come back up. You can be seated. That's all. I want to see if I can make white people do what I tell them to do. So I want to say something to Lee that she knows nothing about. So Lee, when you asked Kelly to do that, Kelly called me, and she was scared. It was a huge responsibility. And me being Renee said, girl, you better do that. Lee believes in you. Make it happen. And so I'm so pleased to be able to tell her on her birthday, on the 6th, that you were talking about her. She's going to love it. She's going to love it. My word for everyone in this room is unreasonable. And I also wanted to tell you, I love me some Debbie. I just love me some Debbie. When you're unreasonable about everything, unreasonable about customer service, unreasonable about being passionate. Oh, and I'm the possibility of people serving other people passionately. Let me say that again. I'm the possibility of people serving other people passionately. And that is what CUPride does. It makes everybody feel welcome. And I'm so thrilled about that. I am thrilled that ACUC has been right there with my friends saying, we got you. Can you imagine the African American community? They don't welcome gay people. We're not open about it. But at ACUC, we have a love fest. Just saying, just saying. Of course, it's with drinks. That's probably why it's a love fest. So when I talk about being unreasonable, what I mean is, are you being disciplined with your kindness? Being unreasonable with your kindness. If you're unreasonable with your kindness as an ally, you are really helping people because you're being empathetic in a way that they're not expecting it. And so what I look at, and my team, my all-star team, they are really working hard to make sure that everyone has a terrific member experience. So when you're looking at allyship, can you step into that person's shoes? Lee said she noticed that they needed this information, critical conversations, crucial conversations. So she not picked on someone, she volunteered someone to do that, but because the organization needed it, it's a wonderful thing. So when you're looking at how can you be an ally or what you want from your allies, you have to be very specific. Zach was very specific with me about what he wanted me to do. Susan has been very specific about what she wants me to do. Linda has been very specific about what she wants me to do. And oftentimes, I'm very specific about what I want Linda to do. And so in support, when Linda won last year for her Wagner, I was thrilled for Linda. And I said, because if you know me, I'm a bossy kind of chick. And so I said to her, I'm going to dress you I'm apologizing because I sounded like an idiot now. But I wanted her to feel comfortable and I wanted her to be glamorous. And she's just not a glamorous chick, but she dolled up and she was good looking. And Lucy Ito and I wanted to support. And so instead of wearing ball gowns, we wore cute pants too. So what can you do that's gonna make somebody feel comfortable? Go out of your way. Be unreasonable. Say it with me on 3. 1, 2, 3. Unreasonable. You ain't saying it loud enough. One more time on 3. 1, 2, 3. Unreasonable with your kindness. That's all I got for you.
Oh dear, when you follow her, I can present as big. So first of all, I'm going to say one thing, Renee. I have never found the black community not loving of LGBTQ folks. As a gay man and mostly an interracial dater, I have always found
Black don't crack. He knows what to do.
What I will say to you, I had to say that. Renee did something for me. Many of you know that my husband died 12 hours before our wedding. 12 hours. And Renee sent me a beautiful plant. And I've never sent her a thank you note. Let me just say that. My mother reminds me of that often. But I will say that when I got it, it spoke to me. And it still speaks to me. It's still in my house. It's still alive. I have not managed to kill it. But when we're here and when we're talking about this, do something. Renee did something. Renee did something. It impacted me. It still impacts me. Your love came through in what you sent. It was a difficult time because actually in losing George, I came out in a way, in a story I can't explain to you. I still walk into rooms and people say, oh my gosh, that's him. That's him. That's one of my stories. There's a real asshole that used to run state employees. I'm gonna tell. I told Lee I was gonna tell the story. He's not always good to her, but
Amen.
But in 1996, I was 25 years old. I was a gay man in an interracial relationship in North Carolina. Before it was cool, let me just say that. And I got a note card from this person. I won't name him. He who shall not be named. And all it said was, keep doing what you're doing. And I called him. And he said, I'm not going to talk to you about everything that I should talk to you about, but don't stop and don't change. It was important. Do something. He did something. He does a lot of things. I want to say that because the theme to our section was about the death of motivation. I reject the death of motivation. I reject it. We may not be able to do DEI in the way that we could 4 years ago, but I reject that the motivation has gone away. I reject that. Implement anyway. I work for CU Strategic Planning. I'm one of the 5 owners. I work with 4 women. I own a business with 4 women. I thought as a gay man, I understood women. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about that. I will tell you one of the things that happened is that a credit union said to me at one point, you are too enthusiastic and we do not want you to work with us. Do you know what enthusiastic meant? Super gay. That's what it meant. And 2 people in this room, Jamie Strayer, and my dear friend here, Shirley Sen. Jamie lost her mind. Let me just say that. You're familiar with Jamie losing her mind. And she said, they are fired. They're fired as a client. And I said, oh, hell no. They're not fired as a client. I said, I'm going to move them. We're going to continue to work with them. And you know what I did? I picked the other gay man in our office, and I assigned them to him. And he was not super well known, and they still work with him, not knowing that they are working with a gay man. So this is when you have allies, when you have people that have your back. They were willing to cut off this business for me, to support me. But I don't believe, especially as a lawyer, especially as a gay man, I can believe and understand when people disagree. I can believe in that. I don't necessarily want to lose their money. So we found a way, and they still work with us. I think credit unions are lazy many times. We need to be anti-lazy. We need, one of the things I think that's most important in the hiring process, whether it's board members, whether it's management, whether it's staff, you have to recruit a group of diverse candidates to the table and let the best ones win. You must actively seek out, you must encourage. I've done a number of CEO searches recently. I have recruited, I've asked people into the process. And sometimes I've had to say to them, you are going to get an opportunity, because they don't think they will get an opportunity. One thing I've learned about working with women in that process is women do not take credit for the credit union's overall successes, and men do. And I don't understand this. But when I'm working with a group of candidates, I talk to women candidates and say, you need to be able to represent the success. If you're the COO of a $3 billion credit union, own the success of the credit union. Male candidates own the success of the credit union. If you're in these opportunities, sometimes you don't get it the first or the second time. Fight for it. I want to say that, sometimes that when we're talking about pride, pride to sometimes the outside community is about parades. It's about those kinds of activities. By the way, I love a good parade. I get to come out every day by saying to folks in credit union land that I work from Palm Springs, California, the only gay majority city in the country, over 50,000 people. It is a way of coming out, actually. If you can't figure it out from there, you should. We have an entirely gay office in Palm Springs. We have 3 employees that work from there. We are all gay men, and we do not have to code switch when we're talking. Girl, you need to be quiet. I am on the phone. That is, you will hear that in our office. And then we will very professionally talk to you about CDFI, because our 5 owners, we are now at the cusp, I know Jamie said this earlier, of having won $1 billion on behalf of credit unions. And I really believe it's been about our diverse, being woman-owned. We're a woman-owned business. I believe it's about having the audacity to be who we are. If you work with Jamie, she is who she is. I have followed that. I am the more buttoned down, actually, of the two of us. But Shirley, Stacy, Sharon, all of us have really worked to bring about diversity. I believe that with DEI, we have to reject what's going on. We have to find ways to continue to do it. There are ways to continue to do it. And in the early days, I noticed that we all wrung our hands around this concept of, are we giving lip service? Are we writing checks? Are we not really in it for the right reasons? All of that was there. Well, you know what? Now there is criticism. If we're working with a credit in Seattle that I find very progressive, that Seattle region, they've had DEI rejected. I think what we have to do is move it sometimes a little bit more underground, but it can still happen. It should still happen. And it can happen in the ways that are most important. And again, I'm coming back to give you, it should happen in the way you recruit board members, management, and staff. And with that, I will leave you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give this panel a round of applause. Thank you to all of our panelists and to all attendees who have invested your time in being here and creating more inclusive environments within your organizations. We'd also like to thank our CUPride members who help make all of this possible, and to call out our pioneer allies. Without them, their engagement, discipline, and investment, this movement would not be possible. Mitchell Stankovic and Associates, BECU, Schools First Federal Credit Union, State Employees Credit Union, TrueStage, and Visa. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd like to ask my good friend Barb Lohman, president of CUNA Strategic Services, to come up here and talk. Also a sponsor and champion for CUPride, to come up and share a few words.
Hi, honey. Hi. How are you? It's so good to see you. Thank you very much for letting me join you.
I know we get excited with champagne. Barb, just take over. You've been there before.
All right.
Take over.
All right. Like many of you, it's been a crazy day for me today. I started out at 7:30 this morning with my board meeting, and this is my fourth engagement after that. I'm sorry I couldn't be here all day to spend the day with you. What an amazing event. And the way this has grown and expanded from the original underground event into a CUPride event in the afternoon, to me, is just heartwarming. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community, it's amazing to me to see how far we've come in the last 7 years. 2 years ago, I'm going to choke up when I look at Debbie Wiggy and say this. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have stood in front of you and acknowledged that I was a member of the community. So in 2018, 7 years ago, I was interviewing with my boss at Fiserv for a promotion, for a senior leadership level promotion. And he had me fly into Midtown Atlanta to have breakfast at the Flying Biscuit. Does anyone know where the Flying Biscuit is in Midtown? Woo! So we sit down, Molly, to have breakfast. And he's late. Obviously, it was a male power play, but it was okay. I was dealing with it. He comes in and he sits down and he goes, I'm really sorry we had to meet at the corner of Gay and Gayer. That was the way he started the interview. He said, I'm really sorry we have to meet at the corner of Gay and Gayer. So if you're not familiar with that area in Midtown, there are crosswalks that are painted with rainbow flags, and they're very accepting. And the Flying Biscuit is a very famous breakfast spot at the corner of these intersections with the rainbow flag painted intersection. So the president of the credit union division, and it was not Mark Sivright for the record, because he's a very good friend of mine, sits down across the table from me and says, I'm really sorry we have to meet at the corner of Gay and Gayer. I went through the formality of a quick discussion and excused myself, and within 3 hours sent an email removing myself from the candidacy pool for the promotion, and within 2 months I was gone. That was what he didn't know at the time, was that I was in the process of ending my 30-year marriage to my husband and that I was in a relationship with a woman and just learning who I am and embracing my true authentic self. And what he did to me crushed me as a human. So for me, for us as a community to have this safe environment and to have all these allies that show up every day and check on us and support us and engage with us is amazing. So I asked Zach if I know I couldn't be here all day, but I wanted to come and share at least a couple thoughts and a couple moments and raise a glass and say, cheers to every one of you in this room. Whether you're a member of the community or an ally, we appreciate you and your support so much, and we are a family. We're not just a credit union family, we're an allyship. And cheers to us. Cheers to an amazing GAC this year in 2024. Let's rock it, guys. Woo! Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. For anybody that didn't get champagne, I think yours is in the hallway out. I'm just saying, we'll get a glass later. The final words today, I'd like to bring up Susan Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Stankovic and Associates, advisor, supporter, sponsor, champion for CUPride.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, I'm the drinker of the group, just want to mention. Barb, thank you so much for sharing that story. I wrote a couple of notes here because I was thinking about how do you wrap up a day like this? It's been an incredible day. And I thought the world is full of special people, special humans. When a baby is born, you immediately count their fingers and their toes, and you utterly marvel at the wonder of it all. Those are those moments that we just all kind of melt. And yet today was a reminder that that's all of us. We're that human baby that was born, that came into this world to change it. Our presence, our humanness is a being. So human beings are what make up this world. And I'm blessed, in fact, maybe too blessed because I'm going to cry, but I'm blessed to be around the people in this room, to work. Brandy, Zach, Linda, I think when they came together and said, let's do CUPride, there was a moment when the PSCUs and the DE Collective, and I'll forget all the people, the CUNA Mutual at that time, and all the people that said, yes, let's stand together. They became that human being that was born, that we marveled at. So I'm going to raise a glass too, and I'm going to say, here's to all the humans in this room who are going to change the lives of not only each other, but of the future babies of the world. Thank you. Cheers.
Here, here. Thank you all for being here. Have a great GAC.